One of the big questions I had before reading The Two Towers was how the Ents managed to deal with the white wizard who dwelt in Isengard. After all, we're talking about Saruman, the former head of the Order of Wizards. And while Tolkien doesn't overuse magic in The Lord of the Rings, in life or death situations, it's often employed as a last resort. Gandalf the Grey, for instance, used magic when he faced the Balrog in Moria, when he repelled the Nazgul in Minas Tirith, and also when he was forced to confront the Ringwraiths alone at Weathertop. Remember that place where Frodo was wounded by the Witch King? Well, Gandalf was cornered by them at that same spot on another occasion, and even though he was alone, he conjured flames so great that they forced the Nazgul to keep their distance.
Quote from Gandalf in The Fellowship of the Ring. I galloped to Weathertop like a gale, and I reached it before sundown on my second day from Bree. And they were there before me. They drew away from me, for they felt the coming of my anger, and they dared not face it while the sun was in the sky. But they closed round at night, and I was besieged on the hilltop, in the old ring of Amonsul. I was hard put to it indeed. Such light and flame cannot have been seen on Weathertop since the war beacons of old. At sunrise I escaped and fled towards the north.
So considering that when Gandalf found himself cornered, he usually resorted to magic, it always made me wonder, why didn't Saruman do the same when Isengard was invaded by the Ents? Let's investigate this in this video. It's not just us readers who question Saruman's stance. Even some characters within the story raise this issue. Merry and Pippin, for instance, even suggests that Saruman might have been a fraud.
Quote from The Two Towers, I don't know what Saruman thought was happening, but anyway, he did not know how to deal with it, Pippin said. I wonder if his fame was not all along mainly due to his cleverness in settling at Isengard. Aragorn then replied that Saruman's magic might have waned recently, but that he had indeed once lived up to his fame, and even now he had retained some of his power, especially of his voice. Quote, his wizardry may have been falling off lately, of course, but once he was as great as his fame made him. The wise he could persuade, and the smaller folk he could daunt. That power he certainly still keeps. There are not many in Middle-earth that I should say were safe if they were left alone to talk with him, even now when he has suffered a defeat.
In other words, Saruman's powers diminished since his fall. In Tolkien's universe, any being who falls and becomes disconnected from the creator, Ilúvatar, gradually loses their powers. Even Sauron's master Morgoth, the most powerful of the Valar, suffered from the same issue, which is precisely why he was defeated and banished. But there was a way to, so to speak, partially circumvent this problem by transferring one's power into something more durable, be it an artifact or a creature. That's exactly what Sauron did with the One Ring. He anchored a large portion of his power into it to prevent it from dissipating. Saruman, on the other hand, invested most of his power in his creations, both mechanical and biological. In the books, he is described almost like a scientist, conducting tests, breeding creatures, and performing dark experiments. Beyond the Uruk-hai, he created hybrids of men and orcs, crossbred trolls, and forced his subjects into practices that Tolkien says are better left unmentioned due to their impurity. A clear example of this comes from the accounts of Merry and Pippin. Quote,
I could see their faces. Most of them were ordinary men, but there were some others that were horrible. Man-high, but with goblin faces. Sallow, leering, squint-eyed.
But there's a very interesting detail here. Pippin argues that, considering everything he saw, even if Saruman still had his powers, it would still have been very difficult for him to deal with so many enemies of that caliber.
Quote, his wizardry may have been falling off lately, of course, said Pippin. But anyway, I think he has not much grit, not much plain courage alone in a tight place, without a lot of slaves and machines and things, if you know what I mean. Very different from old Gandalf. An angry Ent is terrifying. A punch from an Ent fist crumples up iron like thin tin. Their fingers and their toes just freeze onto rock, and they tear it up like bread crust.
and there were plenty of them. When the Ents had reduced a large part of the southern walls to rubbish, Saruman fled in a panic. They did not spot him at first, and suddenly Quickbeam gave a cry, "The Tree Killer! The Tree Killer!" Quickbeam is a gentle creature, but he hates Saruman all the more fiercely for that. His people suffered cruelly from orc axes. He leapt down the path from the inner gate, and he can move like a wind when he is roused. It was a near thing. Quickbeam was so hot after him that he was a step or two of being caught and strangled when he slipped in through the door.
Despite all this, Saruman did not fall without a fight. He may not have conjured spells of fire, but in the books, he made his machines spew liquid fire against his enemies. The result was the worst possible for him. One Ent died and the others entered a state of fury.
Quote, "When Saruman was safe back in Orthanc, it was not long before he set some of his precious machinery to work," said Pippin. By that time, there were many Ents inside Isengard. Some had followed Quickbeam, and others had burst in from the north and east. They were roaming about and doing a great deal of damage. Suddenly up came fires and foul fumes. The vents and shafts all over the plain began to spout and belch. Several of the Ents got scorched and blistered. One of them, Beachbone I think he was called, got caught in a spray of some liquid fire and burned like a torch. A horrible sight. That sent them mad.
"I thought that they had been really roused before," said Pippin,
But I was wrong. I saw what it was like at last. It was staggering. They roared and boomed and trumpeted until stones began to crack and fall at the mere noise of them. Mary and I lay on the ground and stuffed our cloaks into our ears. Round and round the rock of Orthanc the Ents went striding and storming like a howling gale, breaking pillars, hurling avalanches of boulders down the shafts, tossing up huge slabs of stone into the air like leaves. The tower was in the middle of a spinning whirlwind. I saw iron posts and blocks of masonry go rocketing up hundreds of feet and smash against the windows of Orthanc.
Indeed, my friends, the Ents invasion was no joke. And Tolkien said that, though slower, they were stronger than trolls. In the end, the White Wizard didn't cast spells because his spiritual strength had already faded. His magic was now the fire of machines, toxic smoke, and the monsters he created in his laboratories. But against the fury of the Ents, this was not enough. Clearly, the professor wove a symbolic critique into this clash. The relentless force of nature taking revenge on aggressive and predatory industrialization.
What's making that noise? It's the trees.
If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps a small channel like this grow, and it would be an honor to have you here from the beginning. Take care and see you in the next one.